be hearing from your classroom teachers for your children who are in self-contained or at the Turkey Hill in an interdisciplinary group in grades 4 and 5. You'll learn your team assignment for the middle school as well. It may take a bit longer for schedules to be ready for the high school students because we really are in many cases looking to reschedule and hand schedule. So, you know, if you are a parent of a high schooler, just please bear with us as we finalize all of the plans. So at this point, building administrators are finalizing their own reopen plan for their building so that you will have the specifics around what mask breaks look like, what lunch is going to look like, flow of traffic around the building, arrival to and from school, those sorts of things. It's too hard for me to answer all of the questions relative to that are school-based. So just know that more details are coming from each of your schools through your principal. As part of that information that comes out, we'll also be sharing with you the schedules that have been created. So the Monday schedule for students will be different from the Tuesday through Friday remote day schedule. But all of that information will be coming as part of the school level reopen plan. And again, that information won't be coming from the superintendent's office. It'll be coming from the building principals. Liz, anything else that I've forgotten just to set a stage here before we?
No, not at all. I think you've covered everything so far.
If you would use the chat feature to ask any questions, we'll start scrolling through and answering the best we can. I can tell you that not every detail is finalized, so I imagine that there will be questions that I will have to tell you that I can't provide you a specific answer at this time. It may have to do with the finalization of schedules at the building level, but we'll do our best to provide you some information. Let's see. Will there be a meet and greet for each class? It would be great to start off all together. The answer to that is no. If we could have a physical space to accommodate all of the students, we would have had a full return to school. So I don't think that we're planning a meet and greet in a physical sense on the campus with each of the teachers. Some of the teachers are going to be assigned to teach full remote classes because we will have enough students to take and assign to a full remote class. So there's no opportunity there for a physical meet and greet prior to. We had discussed the possibility of opening on the 16th remotely so that teachers could have, you know, an opening on the 16th in a virtual platform like this where students aren't wearing masks and the teacher isn't wearing a mask so that everybody can see each other's faces. Our challenge at this point is the order for Chromebooks that was placed in June that we were told would arrive in July was then you know, bumped out until mid-August and then was bumped out until the end of August and now is bumped out to the middle of September. We're hanging tight right there right now. We call the vendor and verify where we're at every other day at this point. So 2 to 3 times a week, we are in touch with the vendor relative to our delivery date for the devices. Ideally, we would have liked to have had them in hand now so that we could have distributed a device to every student prior to September 16th. And then we really and truly could have opened the first day of school virtually, where everybody could see each other, and we would work on building that sense of community with the classroom before any of the students set foot on the physical campus. Right now, I don't believe that we're going to actually have delivery of those devices in a timeline that would allow us to do that, but stay tuned. You know, miracles happen from time to time, and if we get that shipment in ahead of time, we'll put that right back on the table for discussion, and if we can make that work, we definitely will. So, you know, I think if you're thinking about, you know, the primary school level, oftentimes we've had a social for the kindergarten students, and they get to come into the building. We're not going to be able to do something like that with the entire kindergarten class. But I can tell you that the principals are working on the return to school as we speak. So if there's some sort of meet and greet that can happen, you'll be hearing from the principals. Will school sports be happening? School sports are allowed to happen. Some of them, not cheer and not football. However, the MIAA in coordination and consultation with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education created a 4th season called their floating season. So essentially the fall season is a bit abbreviated. Then there's a winter season that starts earlier than usual and it's a bit abbreviated. Then there's a floating season before the spring season. And at this point, what I'm hearing is that leagues, so we belong to the Mid-Watch League, the leagues can make a decision about potentially, are we going to have a fall season, or are we going to bump all fall sports to the floating season? So I can tell you that our AD is working on that with the ADs of the Mid-Watch League. Our AD is one who is on one of the task groups at MIAA. So he's been involved all the way through this, this closure period, working with the MIAA. So as soon as we have additional information on sports, whether we will have fall sports in the typical fall season, you know, like in a couple of weeks, or if potentially that fall season is going to be bumped to follow the winter season and happen before the spring season. The spring season now will conclude in July. So stay tuned on that. I know that the AD has been tweeting out as well that asking folks to be patient, that they're still trying to work out the details about how they can make all of this work. And as soon as we have something definitive, we will definitely let you know. If a student has their own Chromebook, will they be required to use the Lunenburg issued Chromebook, or can they use a personal one?
Okay, I can answer that if you'd like.
Oh, sure.
The short answer really is no, mostly because the way we manage Chromebooks and content filtering, which is something we're required to do, Chromebooks have to be enrolled into our organization. So it basically turns somebody else's Chromebook into our Chromebook. We would be able to turn it off, turn it on, manage it in pretty much any way we wanted. So we do have Chromebooks for everyone, or everyone that's going to, or we're going to when this delivery arrives. Those will all be configured before we hand them out, and they'll be ready to go. I don't see an issue. I mean, I guess I do see an issue, because if we were to open that possibility, I think it would just create a huge amount of work for my team. Enrolling and unenrolling Chromebooks and trying to manage that process would be just something we can't do. So I guess that's a long answer, and it's a no, even if the short answer was no as well.
Thanks, Steve. For all of you who don't recognize, that's Steve Malandrinos, our IT director.
I apologize. I should have
Nope.
introduced myself.
Has any progress been made in hiring the second grade teacher vacancies? As soon as we know we have vacancies, we're posting positions. We have to keep positions posted for a certain number of days. We have to go through an interview process, and then a recommendation for hire is made. So since we only had notice a week ago for at least one of those, and only a few days ahead of that one did we have that other second grade resignation. So technically speaking, yes, we are into the process, and therefore time is moving through the process, and we will be making a hire before the kids return. Is there a plan to test or require COVID tests prior to the start of the year? No, not for teachers, not for students. Is there a way that you can ask for cohort A or cohort B? We're not taking requests, to be assigned to a specific cohort. If you have other extenuating circumstances around why you would need to have a specific placement, I would recommend that you contact the principal. But the cohorts are going to be finalized at the end of this week, so you don't have a whole lot of time if you've got some unique circumstance that you would like, the admin to consider in the cohort placement. Will remote students be able to participate in sports? Again, yet to be determined. When will days be determined for the hybrid cohorts? Or how is that being determined so we can plan childcare? Again, the registration period for remote requests and bus transportation closed this Friday. That's the last bit of data that we need to look at in order to set our cohorts. Cohort assignments will be coming from the building level, not from the district level, next week. Outdoors. Not sure what that means exactly. If you're asking if we will have students outdoors more frequently, the answer is yes. If that's not the correct interpretation of that question, please do feel free to rephrase that question so that I can get the answer that you're looking for. Which days of the week will be for physical classes? Teachers will be teaching physical classes Tuesday through Friday. Students will be assigned to a cohort. Those students, based on their cohort, would attend classes physically either on Tuesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Friday. You'll know your cohort assignment next week. Will drop-off times at the schools be elongated to accommodate so many kids being dropped off compared to last year? So that is part of the building level planning at this point. So when the principals finalize the plan, the schedule, all of that will be a part of it. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming. By what date are they requiring proof of the flu vaccine? So I just learned today that that deadline is December 31st. New Hampshire is starting outdoors. Was this considered? So New Hampshire, all of the state is teaching out of doors. I'm not sure that that's the case. And no, we did not consider teaching all of the students on the campus outside. We feel that we can create a safe space inside with fewer students in the classroom, physical distance of 6 feet, masks, and so on. But again, students will be spending more time out of doors. If a high amount of students are doing remote, is there a possibility for full in-person class? We're not seeing those kinds of numbers coming in right now, so I'm gonna say based on the data I have right now, given that there are still 2 days of the registration window, I'm gonna say that that's not looking very likely at all. Hopkinton, Mass is doing a full opening. We looked at that and there were other challenges that we would face that were significant hurdles, including the fact that we would have to transport all of the children by bus, and we have only 10 buses. We do not have any possibility that we're going to be able to access additional buses, which would have meant a significant rearrangement of the entire district for start and end times, not by building, but potentially by grade level pairings. We ruled that out. That, coupled with the space that we would need for lunch periods, we would have had to start lunches at the middle high school at 9:30 a.m. and conclude lunch periods at 1:40 again. And that is even with outdoor seating. So for those big reasons, we determined that that was not the most viable option for us. Will there be a full-time option for children of parents who are educators? So we are going to create the Remote Learning Center. You'll be hearing more about that shortly. We're going to prioritize spaces for essential workers, and teachers, at least at the national level, have been declared as essential workers. In a conference call with the commissioner today, legally they were looking at what that might mean at a state level. So I am anticipating maybe some additional information and guidance, but I would suggest that stay tuned for information on the Remote Learning Center. Can you use any assistance? The community has many professionals who might be happy to offer help. We're not entertaining volunteers in the classroom at this point. I'm not sure the nature of the assistance that the person who's asking this question is thinking about. But if you want to clarify that question, rephrase that question and put it back in, that would be fine. Who and how do we report that our children had a very difficult time during the spring? Your school principal? How many student-aged youth have contracted COVID? I don't have that figure. If football will be later in the winter, spring, will homecoming and float still be able to happen? We've talked about that. We haven't made that a top priority because there are other things that need to be decided right now in order for us to open. But our initial conversation around that is we don't believe that we can have that happen and maintain safe protocols around it. That said, that's not a definitive decision here. I'm just saying that the initial thinking about it, it's not looking like that will happen, at least not in its traditional timeline. But stay tuned. So given bus use restrictions, what is the district doing to work with the public safety officers to assure kids are safely walking to school for folks who live inside of a mile? So as you know, we don't, even in town, we don't have enough police officers that would be on a first shift to be out across the entire town, because many of our roadways here in town don't have sidewalks. So no, there's no official plan for any added support from the safety department, but I'm happy to have a conversation with our SRO and get his thoughts on that. And if any of that information changes, we'll push that out in another communication. All kids will be issued Chromebooks, question mark. Yes. Yes, from grades 3 through 12, Chromebooks. At the primary school grades, iPads. Our challenge right now is that, again, the order that we placed in June was initially supposed to be delivered to us in July, and then was pushed out to mid, and then late August, and now to mid-September. We're still calling every other day to hear, are we still on track for a mid-September delivery? Right now, we have been told, and it hasn't changed, the week of September 14th. As soon as we have all the devices in, they will be issued. So yes, this question here is around kindergarten. Both parents are working parents and won't be able to do the remote learning until the afternoon. Will he be required to log in at certain times? Yes, we are going to have a school schedule, and the kindergarten schedule will be designed in a way that is developmentally appropriate for kindergartners. I don't know yet what the Google Meet schedule looks like for kindergarten just yet. So I don't know exactly what the first login time for a meet for kindergarten is going to look like. It's possible that there won't be one in the early morning. But once you get your kindergarten assignment and you see what the schedule looks like for kindergarten, you might have some conversation with the principal about your specific challenge. Will high school students that drive to school have to get a parking permit this year? We don't anticipate changing any of that, although recognizing that students are not going to be coming to the campus 5 days a week, we can absolutely look at reducing the fee. However, that would have to go before the school committee to be approved before it could be put into effect. What was the cost to purchase Chromebooks for all, and was a cost-benefit analysis done? We did not do a cost-benefit analysis because this is essential for us to be able to deliver instruction this year, whether we're in hybrid mode or full remote. So we knew that we needed to purchase devices. I don't have the total cost. I'm not sure if either Mr. Cassidy or Mr. Malandrinos has a roundabout figure on the total number of Chromebooks that were purchased, well, Chromebooks and iPads.
I do, yeah. The Chromebooks, actually both orders were about the same. They were right around $90,000. And we did get that grant from DESE for $55,000, which is going to go towards the purchase of the iPads.
Will full remote students be able to receive IEP services? Yes. Mrs. Hanscom's on this meeting. Do you want to add anything, Juliana, to that question? Liz, can you unmute her maybe?
Sure, she should be able to unmute herself, but let me do that.
Oh, there I go.
Yep.
I was trying to use the little 3 button and it wasn't working. So what we are looking to do is to provide as many IEP services from the service delivery grid as possible. And that would be within the timeframes of Tuesday through Friday in person. So, and it depends on the cohort. If you can have services and be on a 2-day cohort, then you will be. If you need 4 days to deliver those services, then you would be.
And what about the full remote kids?
The full remote kids, and now if we have to go full remote, then what will happen is the students that can remain in district, the ones that are eligible are if you meet certain criteria by DESE, and that's a high needs category, as well as certain subgroups. And that's why in the letter that I had sent out to all of the special education families yesterday, I had said that special education liaisons will be calling each of you or sending you emails to have these discussions when they start school on Monday or Tuesday next week. You'll should start getting the phone calls in to families. And then those liaisons will be able to give you much more detail for your specific child's grid and what that might look like for the school day.
Thanks, Juliana. Next question is about a child entering kindergarten and what kind of remote learning would a kindergartner realistically be able to do? Realistically, they surprise us and they can do a lot more sometimes than we anticipate that they might be able to do. I would say that we have a really strong kindergarten team of teachers. They fully understand what's developmentally appropriate, and they will be designing the ways in which they work with students remotely to be developmentally appropriate. So as an example, they're not expecting a kindergartner to log on at 9 a.m. and stay logged on until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The day will be broken up in a way that there will be some appropriate amount of time in a Google Meet. So with little ones, a Google Meet might last 10 minutes versus at the high school level, a Google Meet could go on for 45 minutes. Students at that age level are much better equipped to be attentive to a 45-minute classroom virtually. So again, I would say stay tuned. The schedules are being developed, and they're being developed at the building level because we need the schedules to be appropriate developmentally for the grade levels. So more information will be coming when you receive the reopen plan for the school. Can we explain again why children can't use their personal Chromebook?
So briefly, I mean, we can't stop someone from using any device they want when they're at home, but we issue these Chromebooks with certain management software on there that allows us to filter content and be in compliance with state and federal regulations as far as content filtering goes. There are laws in place that we have to filter content for students. Inappropriate content, gambling, pornography, whatever it may be. There's lots of categories. So since we can't control outside devices, we issue a device that is under our control that we can content filter, and that's the device we recommend is used. Obviously, there are more devices at home. You can use them, we can't stop you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are siblings taken into consideration in a cohort? Yes. Will students be required to wear masks outdoors? So again, details on this front will be coming, but let me ask Mr. Adams. I think he's on the call. Liz, can you unmute him?
Yep, he should be able to unmute.
Okay.
Lafreniere is laying down the law for returning students.
So,
Hello, Mr. Adams. Can you talk a little bit about what you're envisioning that the recess time might look like at your building?
so currently we're building into our schedule a 30-minute block of time for each class, regardless of the grade level, to use the playground equipment. And we are not necessarily looking at the students continuing to have masks on, but it's going to depend on if we can manage the social distancing at recess time. We're looking at facilitated recess activities. I think, I still have to talk to my building leadership team and, to get more details around how they envision that really working on, in real time, right? On paper, it looked good, but in real time, we need to really look at that.
And if the social distancing can't be managed, then it would be a masked playtime.
That's right. Yep.
Mrs. Champagne, do you want to talk a little bit about what recess time might look like in your building?
Yes. So we're going to assign a different physical location for each cohort to go to recess. And so it will kind of be the same as their math breaks. So it might be in the field between the upper and lower parking lot, for example, or it might be over on the side of the building. I certainly hope that they can be unmasked because it will be a small group of students. It will be the same 10 or 12 who have just been in class together. We're going to encourage children to bring their own sort of playground toys. So a jump rope, for example, something that they can play with individually so that we're not, you know, having cross exposure. But yeah, I want kids to be able to go outside for recess and be able to be unmasked while they do it in a safe way.
And Mr. Santry, what would it look like at the middle school?
So typically our recesses happen at the end of a cafeteria period where they have about 23 minutes. So at that time, students will be in the cafeteria unmasked at 6 feet distance. Weather permitting, we could let them eat outside and in our recessed area, hopefully continue with a mask break during that 22-minute time. As the other two principals had said, we're going to have to manage that based on students and their ability to keep that 6 feet of distance. If we are having difficulty managing that, it'll have to be masks on during that recess period.
Thank you. Another question about kindergarten. Will she get to meet her teacher before the first day of school? We know that we're doing, and maybe Mr. Adams can unmute again. We know that we will be doing kindergarten screenings that typically happen in May, which did not happen this year because of the closure. And those screenings will begin September 16th. And we will conclude those screenings prior to the first day of kindergarten, which is on the 29th. Mr. Adams, can you talk a little bit about what you envision might happen in those days prior to the start of kindergarten?
So once we have the cohorts established, like Dr. Burnham talked about, and we can generate the class list for our staff, the teachers are going to be reaching out to the families to introduce themselves. Basically, those meet and greets that everybody really wants to have without the masks will occur. And you'll also get some more information from the teacher specific to their classroom. There might also be some information that is building based. As far as kindergarten screening goes, I'm currently working with the kindergarten screening coordinator to develop what that's going to look like, because it is a non-typical screening process this year. We're actually looking at different locations. You know, rather than maybe showing up at the primary school, the discussion became possibly using TC Passios. But you know, again, we're gonna look at that, and before we finalize everything, we'll get the permissions we need to do that and get that information out to everybody.
Thank you. With everyone wearing masks and keeping 3+ feet apart, if students test positive, will the entire class be considered exposed and require quarantine? So I have Katie McGuire on this meeting this evening. She has been our middle school nurse for a number of years, and this year we are transitioning her into a different role for the district. She will serve as the health and safety officer. She will be the one that will have the direct contacts with the Board of Health relative to all of this. The only thing I would say is I just want to be clear that with a hybrid model, we're talking about 6 feet of distance, not 3. But if Ms. McGuire is on, if she could unmute, you want to talk a little bit about the COVID protocols from the state and how this would be handled?
Yes, so the guidance is for anyone who tests positive, they will do contact tracing. and look for students who are within 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes. So with the classes spread out, not having the 3-foot distance and having the 6-foot distance, that's going to limit the amount of children who would be closer to the original person testing positive. And we will consult with the Neshoba Board of Health, and they will help us determine based on who has tested positive and from our seating plan who was seated around that person, who will then be required to quarantine.
Thank you. When do you estimate parents will be notified about transitioning from full remote to hybrid for second period? So I'm guessing that this is about the registration for full remote, Brandon. This is my friend Brandon Harris from the middle school. He's been a frequent visitor to my lunch chats at the schools. So I'm guessing potentially, Brandon, maybe you're starting the first quarter remote. About 2 weeks prior to the end of the quarter, we'll be reaching out to families who have children that are registered for full remote, and we will be asking whether or not they wish to remain full remote for quarter 2. And any families that wish to move into remote from hybrid quarter 2 can also notify the administration at that time, and we will make the adjustments that are needed for class assignments to start quarter 2.
May I ask a question?
Can you put it into the chat?
I'm new to this, but I definitely will.
So down at the bottom of your black screen, you should see the little bubble for chat. So you can type it right in.
I see mute, stop video, share, participant, more. I'm on my phone.
Oh, I can't help guide you through the phone right now.
Okay. Let me
So
see
I'll
if
tell you what, if I can get through the end of these, I'll come back to you with the question, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If you click on the more button, the chat will be in there.
Oh, well, okay, hold on.
Thank you.
Oh, chat, there it is. Okay. All right.
So if somebody's asking if I have a preference for red or white wine, because somebody said, we deserve a case of 10. I would say this, thank you very much. But honestly, the entire administrative team has been working out straight all summer long. Actually, even before last year ended, June 12th, we were already at the table planning for this year, and it's been, I fully appreciate for parents how frustrating this has been, because you can't make plans until you have all the information you need to make your plans. And I wish that I could provide you every answer that you needed, but we feel your pain on this because honestly, the guidance from the Department of Ed came slowly over an 8-week period this summer, and guidance continues to change. We got a notice last Friday about changing guidance. So from the bottom of my heart, I fully understand your frustration, and I wish that I could have done something different so that you wouldn't have to have this level of frustration. We're doing the best we can to work out all the details so that when we do provide you the information, we can answer all the detailed questions that you're asking, because we've thought about it to that depth. So hang tight with me just another couple of days, and more information will be coming. Thank you again, all of you, so very, very much for your patience through all of this.
And thank you for your time.
It's our job, right?
It is. It is.
We're going to make sure that it's safe for kids and for staff to come back, and we can get back to the joy of teaching and learning, because that's what we do. That's the thing that keeps us going. We'd like to take that off the shoulder of the parents and bring it back to the campus where it belongs. So again, thank you for your patience and thank you for your partnership through this whole thing. I know it's been extraordinarily difficult and enormously stressful. So thank you all very, very much.
No, thank you.
So what do you as a superintendent want to see happen, whether locally, statewide, or nationally, which would sway you to consider and move to a full reopen? Honestly, we are going to have those limitations for us to be able to go back to a full open, which would be fantastic. It would be really fantastic. They would have to drop all of the guidance. I'd need to be able to load up a bus full of students. I'd need to be able to have them sitting in the cafeteria without masks on the way they've always been, you know, practically shoulder to shoulder. And unless they can drop the safety protocols, I really do not feel that a full reopen is realistic for us. I wish I could say different. But that's what it would take for us to have a full open. We need to drop the social distance guidelines that limit the number of kids on the bus and limit the number of kiddos that I can have in a cafeteria. Another would probably forgo transportation for full in-person studying. Did you consider plastic partitions? Florida is an entirely different state with entirely different guidelines that come from their state level. We're following the guidelines that were provided for us. There has been some relaxation on the use of partitions. We will use partitions when we have students that we're testing for their IEP evaluations. There are some other limited uses where we would have partitions to provide additional separation between students and adults or students and other students when deemed necessary. But I'd like for everyone to consider this. For every partition that we put in the schools, that's another surface area for the virus to linger, and that's another surface area that needs to be disinfected. And if kiddos are moving from class to class as they are in some of the upper grades, all of that surface area would have to be disinfected in between transition of students into classrooms. Additionally, adding all of this to a building, it impacts fire code. Some of these petitions, too many of these petitions, could potentially be an issue with fire code. So I don't, we talk about it, and we will be using the petitions where we feel it's necessary for the added protection for services and learning that have to have this additional layer of protection. But as a mass solution, no. All right, so a senior manager in an IT organization could help getting computers set up. Thank you very much for that offer to help. I would suggest that you reach out directly to our IT director, Mr. Steve Malandrinos, and you can chat with him and find out if there is a way that you could actually help us out. So thank you very much for the offer. I walk the track often, see lots of teens in groups of 12 to 15, practicing soccer and football, no masks on. Is there going to be more supervision regulations regarding this? So there have been, and when we see students on the campus, even if they're with other adults, if we see groups of students not following the state guidelines, not our guidelines, the state guidelines that we are obligated to comply with because we are a facility that is used, we approach them and we counsel them as to what they need to do in order to stay on the facility, or advise them if they can't be compliant that they have to leave. Mr. Londa, I know, has encountered this several times, many times over the course of the summer. Mr. Londa, you want to jump in here and address that concern?
Sure. So the thing is, so we have people arriving, they're individuals. They should be arriving with a mask on. They should be, when they depart, have a mask on. When they're on the field and they're playing, as long as they're maintaining 6-foot distance, they don't need to have a mask. But that being said, we do need them to meet those requirements so that we can keep these facilities open. And that pertains to the track, the turf, the basketball court, and the tennis courts.
Thank you. If kids are remote learners and are supposed to wait for Chromebooks, how are they supposed to have access to education without a Chromebook? So stay tuned on that. If we are actually on track, and like I said, we're checking in every other day to verify that we're still on target for our delivery of Chromebooks the week of the 14th, then we're going to be in good shape. We'll be able to issue a device to every student. If we aren't, if something changes and we hear that we're not going to have those devices until late September or early October, at that point, we'll be reaching out at the building level to determine which families have to have a device, just like we did when we closed. We want to make sure that we can distribute the devices that we do have first to those families who have no other way to access the remote learning. So, you know, stay tuned on that. You'll either be issued a Chromebook or we'll be communicating with you to determine what, you know, if you are one of those families that has to have one of the school Chromebooks in order to begin school. On the full remote days, it sounded like cohorts would not mix. Any thoughts on joining them together to maximize or increase teachers' instruction in front of students? So the full remote days, I think based on the tail end of the question, it references the Mondays. So I'm going to answer this question thinking about the full remote Monday day. I will open this up for each of the principals to talk about how the Monday schedule is shaping up for their schools. And I'll start with Mr. Adams. What does the Monday day look like for students and teachers?
Right now, we're looking at scheduling between 2 and 2.5 hours of time that teachers would be available for students, not necessarily as a solid block of time, because we know that's not developmentally beneficial at this point, but at least be available at that point in time. The individual grade levels will be looking at what that will look like for them. I am stressing that they have common experiences on the individual grade levels, as far as every first grade class will have the same type of online experience for students on those Mondays. We are not at this point in time going to have much more time added on than that.
Okay. So as you think about, let's say, a first grade classroom and a teacher who has 12 students in cohort A and 12 students in cohort B, yep. On Monday, where both cohorts are remote, the teacher would potentially be on a Google Meet with all 24 students at the same time.
Yep, that is definitely a possibility. Again, the details need to be, I need to work out the details with the individual team members and grade level members, but that is something that we'll probably be looking at as, you know, a model that we'll use.
Mhm. Thank you. Mrs. Champagne?
Sure. So our remote Mondays for our hybrid students, teachers would start 8:35 to 9:35 with an hour of common planning time. Then somewhere around, I think 9:45, 4 half-hour periods of time of direct instruction with their teachers. So I did 4 because math, ELA, science, social studies, and with like a 5-minute break in between, would pretty much get you through the morning. And then in the afternoon, whenever you usually have your special, so specials will all be held in the afternoon. So if you're a 3rd grader and your special's at 12:45, then you will go on at 12:45 to meet with your teacher and also have one abbreviated class with that person as well. And then, you know, for teachers, that afternoon time would be dedicated to the planning process and professional development and meetings and make sure everyone's on the same page.
I know it's a little bit different at your level because grades 4 and 5 work in interdisciplinary teams of teachers.
Yep, that's right. So
But
3rd grade, if they're self-contained, right, then it might be one 2-hour stretch of time. But for 3rd graders, I don't think that you're going to have them on for 2 full hours. I think that you might have some direct instruction, then a little independent work time, again at, you know, 10 o'clock or 10:30, and we'll go on to talk about the other subjects.
So thinking about your buildings and your cohort A group and your cohort B group on a Monday, do you envision that
Yes.
teachers would be combining their A and B cohorts to have them together on a Google Meet?
Yes, it's the perfect opportunity, right? Even though you've taught them separately on Tuesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Friday, they've had the same lessons. So on Monday, it's actually the perfect opportunity to get them back together and have one to have the same lesson twice on a Monday, right? You'd have them all together.
Very good. Mr. Santry?
So for Monday at the middle and the high school, the students are going to follow an abbreviated hybrid schedule that we have. So for 25 minutes, they would meet all their classes, A through G. So the day would start with common planning for teachers from 8 to 9. Then from like 9 to 12:05, they would follow the building schedule. Period 1 through 7, it's A through G now. More on that as we move forward through our 6 through 12 hybrid schedule. Meet with each teacher, and then 12:05 to 2:30. Teachers then have the opportunity to plan for those remote days when students aren't in front of them. And yes, we do anticipate A and B cohorts, since they will be in the same homeroom, would get the same instruction during that time from that instructor.
Okay. And the high school is an entirely different scenario. But I'll give Mr. McGrath an opportunity to speak briefly about what the Mondays might look like at the high school. Did we lose Mr. McGrath?
I think we did. I don't think he's on right now, Dr. Burnham.
Is Mrs. Scott on?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So as Mr. Santry just went over, our schedule for the high school mirrors the middle school with a department meeting time in the morning, first thing at 8, and then between 9 and a little after 12, students will follow the building schedule, A through G blocks, so they'll have designated time with each teacher. Both cohorts would be on at that point, A and B, and you know, depending on, most likely they'll both be at the same point. Teachers will be able to differentiate. If not, and we've discussed that with them afterwards, there would be planning time for teachers during that day, but the students would still be working remotely in the afternoon. So they may receive, you know, some instruction, as the other building said, for the meet, and then continue with work in the afternoon.
Thank you all. Are teachers the only essential workers? No. That's actually a relatively new designation at the federal level. There have been many other types of workers that have been deemed as essential. Those are the folks who would have had to go physically to work, like nurses and doctors, while we were in a shelter in place. If Chromebooks aren't in by the 16th, are they still starting school that day? Yes. How can you provide any instruction if the Chromebooks aren't received? Again, if we know that we're not going to receive them in time, we're going to survey parents and we're going to figure out which parents need to have access because there is no device in the home. We will make sure that people who need to have a device have a device. Temporarily, if those folks have devices at home, we would ask them to use those devices until the delivery of Chromebooks comes in, and then a school-issued Chromebook would be provided. I would disagree with the statement that we're clearly starting off this year the way we ended last year, very poorly. There's been an awful lot of time, effort, and energy put into making plans for the full remote model, the hybrid on-campus, off-campus days. I cannot control the fact that the entire globe is looking for devices, and there aren't enough devices to fill all of the orders. We ordered in plenty of time to receive these devices. This is beyond our control. This is not something that's limited to Lunenburg. This is happening to districts across the state right now. The commissioner is fully aware of what's happening, and we're all going to do the best we can. But I would say that even if we cannot issue a device to every student, the remote learning this year is going to look very different from last fall. What are you requiring kindergartners to use for their remote learning? So as I said, grades 3 through 12 will have Chromebooks. Pre-K through grade 2 will have iPads. All right, so this is about a child who's going to be at daycare during school hours and will not be able to log in during school hours. Does that mean I have to homeschool my child? I would suggest that you reach out directly to the principals so that we can have a better understanding of what this situation is. Who are these liaisons that will be calling parents for kids with IEPs? These will be their special education teachers. If Mrs. Hanscom's still on the call.
Yes, it is.
Sure.
So every grade has a special education liaison, and every sub-separate room has a special education liaison. And in some cases, students who just receive speech or OT or PT, those may be the child's liaisons. If you all have a copy of your IEP for your child handy, if you look down at the bottom, it will say the contact person. Although that may change depending on, because we're starting a new school year, so it would be the next year's teacher. If anyone has any questions about who their liaison is going to be next year and would like to know that ahead of time so you can be prepared for the call, please just send me an email and I'd be happy to look that information up for you and give it to you.
Great. This next question is also special ed. What's the time frame for addressing requests for IEP meetings or IEP evaluations? Timelines haven't changed. It's the same legally mandated timeline as it was prior. I don't know if you want to say anything additional, Mrs. Hanscom?
Yep, so last year we did reach out to parents whose child did not get that evaluation in place just because of the fact that we couldn't come in and test. And those were due to what the state guidelines had told us to do. The state then told us to contact parents at the end of last year and look at when that evaluation would be due this coming year. We did that. Many parents got calls about those evaluations with new dates to be agreed upon. Any evaluations that came in over the summer or requests for evaluations, the timelines will be currently in place as of right now, and the dates will start being counted once school starts, September 16th.
Thank you. While the year is starting in a hybrid model, our plans currently developed to go full remote. Yes, we presented those to the school committee on August 5th. If you'd like to review those, they are part of the reopen plan, and that is posted on the district website. Will Google Meets be more streamlined and come with instructions? Last year, we couldn't see others. Sometimes we weren't able to log in properly, troubleshooting. So there's a lot of questions in this question. We, this year, are looking for all students to have their video turned on so that all students can be seen to each other and to the teacher. As far as instructions, students will get instruction within the classroom setting when they're on campus, and their remote teacher can provide some guidance for them as well. Troubleshooting, we are going to have helplines in place for the older students to reach out to IT directly about their issue. For parents to reach out, there's a dedicated line for parents to reach out, and the staff have a fully separate one. So there will be support. Additionally, our teachers are going to be providing some workshops via Zoom or Google Meet. Likely we'll probably use Zoom. And they will be providing some instruction, I guess, to help parents be better prepared to support the learning that happens on remote days. There are many ways to get the flu vaccine other than doctors, pharmacies, employers, and such. What type of proof for the flu vaccination will be needed? I'd ask Mrs. McGuire to pop back on and respond to this one.
Hi, yes, any pharmacy will provide documentation that you have received the vaccine. And so you can just turn that into your nurse. And then physicians will note that on their vaccination schedule with all the other immunizations that your child receives.
So that, just because this next question says they just got back from CVS and had their flu shot, CVS should be keeping track of the flu shots that they've issued and to whom, correct? Because they submit to insurance for that, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I would suggest that you return to CVS and they should be able to provide you some sort of evidence of the vaccination. Live streaming instruction an option for high school students? No. We've looked at that and we've ruled that out. Remote days consist of recorded instruction. Yes, that's one possibility. That's one of many ways to deliver some new instruction. Again, we will be providing additional information about what instruction actually looks like. So for many, many years, we've provided instruction using best practice in a classroom setting, and parents have never had the opportunity to watch how that works. But parents get to watch what happens on remote learning. So we will work to provide some clarification around what best practice in the classroom looks like. And honestly, much of it is going to look similar even in a remote model. So more information around what instruction and best practice in instruction will be coming. Is there any reason that a child's IEP will not be able to be completely fulfilled if the child needs to be remote due to the medical reasons? This is a question from Mrs. Speck, and I think that Mrs. Hanscom has already had conversation directly with you on this matter. Any news about the after-school program? So as I indicated in my communications out to families, I I really do need to know how many bus riders I'm going to have to transport from home to school, to know whether or not I can also transport students from TCP to school and from school back to TCP. Again, I am limited to 10 buses. We're rolling with the assumption that we're going to be able to move forward with extended day. I know that Mrs. Perry has had conversations with all of you about your plans, if your plans are changed, etc. I know that many have called in to ask about what to do about the bus registration. If your child is currently registered for extended day and you haven't submitted a bus registration form, please do. Indicate that you need bus transportation, indicate that your child is registered for extended day, either AM, PM, or both, because those kiddos are gonna have to be in the head count for the bus run. So let me just, when I say bus run, let me just explain what that means. So typically, in a typical year, students grades 6 through 12, those 10 buses roll out into the community and pick up students 6 through 12 and drop them off at the school. The middle high school starts earlier than the primary and the elementary school. Those buses, once they drop kids off at the middle high school, they go back out onto routes and they start picking up kids that are K through 5 and then drop them to the school. So I just need to know how many students we need to accommodate with transportation. And honestly, once I get a look at the numbers, I may have to recommend a change to the Turkey Hills start time to align it with the middle school, and we may not be able to transport high school students. There are any number of things that I'm going to need to look at, and they may then impact other decisions that will have to be made. Right now we're rolling, assuming based on the parent survey that was done a good number of weeks ago at this point, we think that based on those survey results, we should be okay without having to change the start time of one of our schools. I'm just not sure that I will be able to transport to and from TCP in a school. So stay tuned. Again, we will know that information early next week, and we will notify families that are registered for extended day as soon as we know whether or not we can transport the kids from TCP to the school. Any news on a schedule yet? Yep, parents will get information about that with the reopen plan at each building level, and that will be coming out soon. Will your children remain in the same cohort all year? Yes. Is someone going to be live for the remote learning? If you're talking about a full remote where your child is remote learning Monday through Friday, yes, you're going to have a teacher that's assigned to teach them remotely. They may not be live all day long because there's going to be lunch breaks and there will be other things that they do to have students work on things and take them away potentially from the screen for a bit of time. All of that is going to be grade level dependent because we have to design the instruction in a way that is developmentally appropriate for that grade level. If you're talking about, is somebody going to be live for remote learning on the hybrid remote days, Tuesday through Friday, there will be time in the day where there is live connection with the teacher, but it will not be for the entire day. Again, all of that information will come out with the schedule and the reopen plan for each school. Will the 2 days in school be whole days? Yes. Will there be a remote teacher for every grade? Not necessarily. There may not be need for one. Again, we'll make that determination after we have the remote registrations. Homeschool kids can do sports, but remote kids can't. Again, no decision's been made on that. Will remote children have one teacher, or is it part in-classroom teacher and part remote, having both? How does that work? This is complicated because I'm not sure what grade level we're talking about. If you have a child who is a remote a full remote learner and they are, let's say, grades K through 5, they're going to have a teacher assigned to them. At the high school level and the middle school level, where there are several teachers that teach a child, there still will be several teachers who teach a child, potentially even remotely. Again, we need to get a look at the remote registrations, figure out how many at each grade level. And again, all of this additional information will be coming out with the school level plan. Would a bandana, face mask be allowed, or does it have to be a mask? So we actually are looking at some guidelines for what would constitute a face covering that would be appropriate and safe for the school. So there may be some additional information. I can't say that bandanas would be ruled out at the moment, but I can tell you that what I've seen for testing on different types of face masks or face coverings, the gaiters and the bandanas are not quite as effective as some others. If we have specific guidelines that we would recommend, all of that's going to have to go to the school committee for them to approve. So additional information will be forthcoming about masks. Will kids have extra help at school if they fall behind remote at home? So if this is a full remote student, will they have help at school? No. If this is a student who's struggling with the remote days, will there be extra help at school? Yes, but it may not come in the form of after school help. It may come in the form of additional small group supports. Again, this is going to be grade level dependent. So stay tuned for the reopen plan, and if your question isn't answered within that, reach out to the building principal. Off-season MIA rules in effect. So they did put out a ruling that they were suspending the limitations for coaches in the off-season for the entire year. Fall sports shouldn't be practicing until 9/18. That's the start of the season, and yes, however, the facilities are open, students can come on, and as long as they're following the state guidelines for the facility, they can use the facility. Not in a formal captain's practice, and the kids have been advised that they cannot have captain's practice. I myself advised 2 of our sports teams a week ago. Since the high school is not using cohorts, they are using cohorts. There will be a cohort A and a cohort B. If the Chrome stops working, we will have a helpline that you will be directed to that will be posted and available. Parents can reach out to IT. Older students can reach out to IT directly on a separate helpline. If it's deemed that this needs a repair that can't be quickly addressed, we will issue a loaner device, repair your device, and when your device is repaired, we will swap it back out and take our loaner back. If a child's going completely remote, will there be opportunities for kids to chat with their classmates? Yes, in their remote classroom. Other classmates across the grade levels, if we have 5 first grade classrooms as an example, we have not taken the planning to the level of some socialization across teacher cohort assignments at a grade level. Doesn't mean that it won't happen. I just cannot tell you that that is already built into the plan right now. We will be taking a look at that, and it'll be probably advised through our Behavioral Health Advisory Council. State mandates for not opening full-time. How are 11 other schools in the state reopening? I don't know what their conditions are. I don't know what their availability for buses is. I cannot speak to the process that other districts went through in order to be able to open their schools. I know the process we went through. We went through it with all of the state guidance in mind, and this is the recommendation that we felt was in the best interest of teaching and learning for both students and staff. So there's a shout out to the admin team for all your time, effort, and energy on the plan to keep everyone safe. If a Chromebook is issued on the 16th and a child is put in isolation and has doctor protocols, do you understand the time, length, and the device, et cetera, et cetera? These are very specific questions about your specific child. This is not a typical circumstance. I would suggest that you have conversation with Mrs. Hanscom. Regarding Google Meets, teachers and students were having problems so that we couldn't see them. Mrs. Scott, can you hop back on? So there have been some adjustments to Google Meet that will be a little bit different for the upcoming year. There's an extension, I believe, that allows for a grid formation, much like what we have on Zoom. Is that correct?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Yes, Google Meet has a number of different extensions that they've made available and some that are still in development. We're going to include some of those extensions. In fact, we've already pushed out some to our Google Suite. For example, the grid view, there is one that helps take attendance. They're developing breakout rooms, so we're working with IT around, processes there, but we'll include what we're aware of for new extensions now and then kind of keep up with it throughout the course of the year because they change pretty frequently.
Thank you. And again, we'll have trainings for parents available as well. And again, if you're having any issues with tech, definitely reach out to IT. And if you're struggling with the platform itself, we'll also have ways that you can connect with us and we can provide you some additional support to get you up and going. If a child starts remote and has a certain teacher and they decide to go to hybrid second quarter, how will their teacher upon return be decided? They will not continue to have the remote teacher because the remote teacher is teaching a remote classroom of 20 some odd students. So if your student opts to leave the remote, they will be reassigned for second quarter into a hybrid classroom, either cohort A or cohort B. The same would be true in the reverse. So if a parent decided there was too much anxiety for their child and they felt that the best option would be to remove the child from the hybrid setting and put them full remote, that child would be assigned to a full remote classroom and a different teacher. Religious exemptions for vaccinations, yes. IEP delivery if a child is remote. Okay, so I'm gonna have Mrs. Hanscom on one more time. So if a child is in full remote, 5 days a week with their remote teacher, what does IEP delivery look like?
If a child is in full remote, I lost the question in the chat here. Oh, here's it.
It says
So
I'd like to hear an answer
again,
about IEP
if
delivery.
the child's in full remote, the liaison is going to be talking with them at the beginning of the year to tell them specifically how that's going to look based on class sizes, what cohort they may be assigned to, and what groupings they may need to have during the day. They're going to have a set schedule. They will have a set schedule like anyone else is going to have, but I really can't get into the specifics because we don't know yet. We don't have all of the surveys back, like Dr. Burnham has been saying, until Friday, to really be able to dive down to say, yep, your child is going to be getting this for remote at this time. But that will be discussed when the liaison calls you those first couple of weeks.
Will there be a visitation or a tour day before school starts? No, we're not planning for that. What do mask and water breaks look like? That's going to look different in each school. That will be included in the reopen plan. Kiddos are going to have to maintain social distancing in order to remove a mask. And again, the location for that is going to be identified, and the process for all of that will be identified in each building's reopen plan. Is the middle school ventilation system connected to the high school, or are they separate? It's one building, right, Ms. Delonda? One building, one system? Liz, can you unmute him? There you go.
Thank you. So we have control from a single point, but the building really operates as a collection of rooftop systems. So really it's like having 14 different systems. We can bring various parts of the building on and control them. If something should break, a small part of the building might go out temporarily. So it's not one large system. It's just controlled as one system.
Thank you. Will teacher assignments come out next week with cohort assignments? No, not necessarily. I have responded to this question a few times. Next week, the cohort assignments will definitely come out. You will learn whether your child is on A cohort Tuesday, Thursday, or the B cohort Wednesday, Friday. Teachers are back next week. We're going to be spending time with all of the training that is necessary for them. Training will continue to be speckled throughout the 10-day period that we have just teachers on campus. But plan to hear from teachers who will reach out to your child directly to introduce themselves as the teacher the week of Labor Day. Relative to the high school and high school schedules, I can't promise that those will be out the week of Labor Day. It's an extraordinarily complex thing when you're trying to have cohort assignments and remote assignments that may force schedule changes to have to be set up before we notify the students of their schedule. But students should be able to get a schedule before they return. Will seniors be allowed to participate in the STEP program this year? Mrs. Scott, you want to pop back on?
Hi. Yes, Mr. McGrath has been meeting with Mrs. Pouquet, who's the coordinator of the STEP program, looking at some of the guidelines for STEP and career and vocational guidelines that were released by DESE, and they're working out, our options. We'll be following, all the other state mandates as well regarding that. Also, we're discussing student hours. It's going to have to look different this year for STEP as well, since students are not going to be in the building as much, but we're trying to get somewhat creative with that to continue these opportunities for students. And some of the placements will have to be answered kind of on a case-by-case basis.
Do you have maybe 5 or 6 that would like to shadow me and hang with me all day?
I'll ask about that.
I might have some things that they can help me with. Liz, would you like 5 or 6 too? Ms. Yolanda, I know that you can use some extra help as well. Mrs. Hanscom, what if a child has a specialized plan and would like their child to attend in person more than 2 days a week?
So given the size of the cohorts and what we're trying to accomplish with the hybrid, which is keeping class sizes down and delivering services to as many students as possible to meet their needs of an IEP, we really don't have the flexibility right now to be able to open it up to a student whose IEP may only call for them to need to be in for 2 days a week, to do that 4 days.
Thank you. And Mrs. Scott, you might want to be available in a second. Will the remote teachers be the same as in the school teacher for hybrid high school students? So one teacher for a subject, or will they have a different in-person teacher and a different remote teacher for the same class? That's a no. Can you think of any circumstances under which that's not? Our teachers are still, at the high school level, still going to have a cohort A group and a cohort B group, and they are the teacher for both cohorts for the course.
Yeah, if you're a hybrid student and you're in, say, Mrs. Sabatini's math class, then you will have her as your teacher for the in-person and the remote days. If you're a full remote student, that could be different.
And biology for grade 11, how will that be handled for remote learning? Again, this depends on, are you talking about a full remote situation or remote days? I can tell you that at all levels, we've been looking for and have acquired additional curriculum materials in the form of subscriptions and apps and whatnot. And I know that Mrs. Guerin has been pursuing a virtual dissection subscription to support the remote components of biology and AP anatomy and physiology. If your child is the only child in the district who is remote and needs a biology class, it's possible that your child will be assigned to an EduSeer biology class. But we'll have more information as that shapes up with the final registration period. How's a child who's never been to LHS going to be helped navigate the school during the school days? There will be teachers, like there always have been, who are very, very helpful in providing kids direction as to where they need to head to get to their next class. That's a part of the beginning of the school year every year. I don't know, are you planning any tours for kids at the high school level? I know that there was some conversation about that at the middle school level. What's the plan at the high school level?
Students will still have their advisory period each day. So in advisories, especially for the freshmen, that could be an option. You know, we are trying to minimize passing time, but we could work that out. And certainly those advisory teachers really help the students digest the schedule and answer their questions at the beginning of the year. That's primarily what advisory is focused on.
Let's see. Any notification on absence to a Google Meet to parents? Google Meet does track now. This is new to Google Meet. They've added a component that can track attendance in the Google Meet. You know, we've set up a protocol for staff to alert others up a chain of communication. We're probably not at the district level or even at the school administration level going to be calling parents for every child that did not attend a Google Meet. You may get an email though from a teacher who indicates to you that the child missed the class. But again, we might not be sending that after every single Google Meet. If the teacher has a concern about that, they will reach out to the parent first. So yes, you will learn that a student hasn't been in Google Meets, but you might not be alerted immediately. student new to first grade, how will they be helped to navigate the school? I would say, again, these little ones are not navigating the school on their own. And particularly now with the importance of the social distancing and ensuring the social distancing, kiddos will not be navigating the building alone. We talked earlier about the fact that at the primary school, students are going to stay in their classroom, and even the specials teachers, so your art teacher, etc., would come into their classroom. They will not move to another classroom. If they're going to the cafeteria, they're going to be escorted by the teacher or a paraprofessional, as they always would be. So if I could reassure you at all, don't worry. We're going to take good care of your daughter and make sure that she's safe and well and gets to where she needs to be around the school, which will honestly be a very limited amount of travel this particular year for all of the kids. With regards to the remote portion of the hybrid model, you mentioned that children will be expected to have their camera turned on. Would it be okay for a child to have the camera off and just the sound? So if you've got a student that has a particular anxiety around this, I would strongly recommend that you reach out to the principal of the building to have that conversation. There may be certain circumstances which an accommodation needs to be provided due to the anxiety. So on a case-by-case basis, I would say have that conversation. But by and large, the regular expectation for all students is that they are visible in the context of the classroom. Because honestly, students can log in, just like you see on the screen now, names show. These people might not actually be on this call at this moment. They might be somewhere else, but it looks like they're here. So teachers felt that it was important. They needed to be able to see their students in the classroom. We can tell an awful lot sometimes by looking at the kids and watching how they're interacting. We're pretty good at picking up signals for something might not be right. Wonder what's going on with a particular kiddo. This is maybe a follow-up conversation one-on-one with the student. Maybe reaching out to parents to make sure that we know everything that might be impacting the child at the time. So it is going to be pretty important for us to have eyes on the kids. After school pickup has always been a bit time consuming. Yes, yep, it definitely has. With the new distancing protocols, they plan to streamline this better. Again, this is going to be part of the plans that come out from each building. References to any adjustments to pick up or drop off time or the ways in which that's done differently from the past will be included in the plan. Got a kindergartner who isn't going to be easy to convince to get in front of a camera. That's okay. We can work with that. Honestly, once you know who the child's teacher is, have some conversation with the child's teacher and we'll help work to make them feel more comfortable. If the kids are required to have a specific start time for remote learning, how is that supposed to work for someone who works third shift? I can't help with every unique situation. The regulations for this upcoming year are different from the remote that we had in the spring. This year, we have to take attendance. We have to report that attendance, as we always have, to the state. That reporting requirement was suspended while we were closed in the spring. We also have to fulfill the mandated hours for instruction in the course of a year's time. We have to have students working the school day. The Board of Education has asked the commissioner to create an audit system so that we can ensure that remote learners are actually learning their full day. So we just are not going to be in a situation this year where there's going to be a lot of flexibility in the homes for the parents to decide when their child is learning. And I understand that there are some tough, unique circumstances in households that make that very difficult, and I fully appreciate that. But we really don't have a choice. We are school, we are open the school day, and we have designed a remote process that fulfills a school day. Certainly, you know, feel free to have conversation at the building level about challenges and possible solutions. So here's a question about the child wants to go hybrid, but parents are nervous around a health concern. I would say, you know, that's a decision that you're going to have to make, probably in consultation with your child's doctor. If your doctor advises, based on the health condition, that the child should probably stay remote, I think that you have to rely on that advice. If they feel that the child, with all of the safety precautions that the school has put in place, with the distancing and all students wearing masks, hand washing, hand sanitizing, distancing at lunch, and so on. If your child's pediatrician feels that those safety precautions are enough, then maybe you feel comfortable going with that. But I would advise you to consult with your pediatrician and have them give you some advice as to what to do here. I know that some of the kids, you know, they want to go back, they want to be with their friends, but you know, if medically that's not the right thing to do, I know it's hard as a parent to break their hearts and tell them that they can't. Talk to your doctor about it. Liz, I think that's the last question.
Wow. That's great.
That is great.
Yeah, we got through all of them.
All right, so I would just like to first say thank you to all of the administrators who joined this meeting and we're ready to handle questions for parents. I hope that, you know, hearing from the building level administrators or the special ed services director or our facilities director or our health and safety officer, I hope that you know, it may have alleviated some of your concern or anxiety. Again, I apologize for the fact that I don't have all of the answers quite yet, but we're this close. We're this close to having the answers that everybody's going to need to make their plans. And I want to thank you all for taking the time to attend the Zoom meeting tonight and for your questions and your patience in listening to all of the answers. I really do appreciate it very much. Again, as conditions change or new information becomes available, certainly we will be providing you that additional information. But what I would say to you at this point, as far as the next piece of communication that you could be looking for, unless, of course, some new information or guidance comes from the state in the next couple of days, which could happen. They usually provide it late in the day on Friday. Unless some new information comes up in the next couple of days, I think the next communication you can anticipate will be next week when the building level notifies families about the cohort assignment. And likely the following week, your child or you would be contacted directly by the teacher to whom they have been assigned for the year. And they'll reach out and welcome your child. to the classroom ahead of the first day of school. So they will know who their teacher is, and they'll have a chance to chat with them as well. Okay, so again, I know this has been extraordinarily difficult for everybody, and I really, really do appreciate the stress and anxiety that a lot of you have been trying to manage and juggle for weeks, getting this close to the start of school and still not having all the answers that you need to make your plans. We're getting that information together and out to you as soon as we possibly can, because we do understand the situation that you're in, but we want to make sure that the information that we get to you has been thoroughly thought through and is accurate. So again, thank you all very, very much for spending time with us tonight, and for your continued patience and understanding. In a couple of weeks, just a couple of weeks, we'll be back to it. Again, feel free to send an email anytime to the dedicated email, fall 2020 reopen. I respond to all of those emails. So if you have a question, if it's building level specific, I would encourage you at this point to send your email directly to the principal of the building. If it's a bigger, more umbrella kind of a question, you can certainly send it to that fall 2020 reopen email address, and we do get back to you on all of them. So thanks again, everybody, for your time tonight. I see that there's a question about an email sent in. So the fall 2020 reopen, or the LPS online, does not come directly to my inbox. That goes to a separate mailbox. And Liz, who's been moderating the meeting tonight and letting everybody in, muting and unmuting, she's the one that checks those mailboxes. And if there's anything in there, she forwards it off to me. She's not checking them every 15 minutes throughout the day, but when she checks, she'll forward anything that's in there. So Liz, how often would you say that you're checking those accounts?
I check those accounts right now because I know there's a lot coming in. I'm checking them 2 to 3 times a day, or evening even,
Mm-hmm.
and then forwarding.
I can vouch for the evening.
Yes.
What was it, like a week and a half ago on a Friday evening? Liz was forwarding me those emails at midnight. And I was answering them as they were coming into my inbox.
Right.
So we do try to answer them as quickly as we can.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for your patience if you don't get a rapid email response. But we do answer all of those emails. If you've got something of a more urgent nature, you can email me directly, or as I said, email the principal directly. But we'll do what we can to get you the answers that you need. So a question about full remote kindergartners doing kindergarten screening. Yes. Yep. All right, everybody. Thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.